Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where we, the storytellers, bring you, the story listeners, a story. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. Well, we're continuing on. Does someone want to do the recap? This is a spy thriller with sci-fi elements.
Sure, I'll do the recap real quick.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so with the beginning scene, we have, did we get a name for our hero or?
Michael.
Okay, so Michael, it starts out with Michael. He's kind of running and he's trying to make it across this river. He, gets about halfway through, slips, kind of falls through the river, kind of makes it to the other side. But he's kind of onset of hypothermia. Some people pick him up. And as he kind of passes out, these people kind of take him in, and it seems like he gets away from whoever was chasing him. The rest of the story picks up where we find out that I take it near, I think we said Omsk, near kind of the border of like Russia and is it Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan up there?
Don't remember. It's one of the stands.
They had found a kind of archaeological dig, which brought in some like high tech, like Neuralink kind of masks. If I can say Neuralink, is that?
Yeah.
Which then gave the wearers kind of different special abilities, higher cognitive functions. And they were able to develop more masks, I think, kind of based on the design of these other masks.
Right.
However, with this spaceship and this high tech that was found, they had started, and before this, they had started like reaching out, possibly getting ready to send some colony ships to some other planets. However, as spy espionage stories go, something happens and kind of a collective of smaller nations make a preemptive strike and take down kind of the
satellite grid for
satellite grid for some of these more major players.
Right.
Which then kind of sets them back. There's kind of we're in like the couple weeks after what is being presented as like a nuclear apocalypse, as the higher nations have kind of retaliated. Some of it's up in the air, whether some of that's happened or not happened, but kind of where we leave right now is Michael was picked up by I guess you could say kind of the resistance group of these smaller nations that have foiled the plan or are trying to foil the plan of these larger nations who are going to use this excuse to leave Earth and basically nuke the entire surface before they leave. The elite, elites and their, selected few that have a small window of opening because of all the satellites and infrastructure up orbiting Earth, which is now dead. There's only a few like open spots that they at the right time that they can leave, and so everyone's kind of rushing to these spaceports so that they can leave, to kind of escape the nuclear fallout that's supposedly happening. And that's kind of where we're at. Michael, he is he was born over there, adopted into an American family. And got in, I think we said FBI, maybe not CIA.
Some organization.
Some kind of, spy organization. And so he was then restationed over by, near Omsk, partly because of this and partly because of his job. And he was able to kind of reconnect with some of his family that was still over there and his roots that were, over in that area. So we're kind of left with, right now, as Michael is coming to, he's this other group is trying to use his skills to help them out, I think. And
they're gonna force him to they're gonna travel with him to destroy one of the rockets, the Ark ships that's in Omsk.
Okay. And that's kind of where it is, and whether or not at some point he finds out that, the bad guys are the good guys are the bad guys, or kind of, all the different, spy intrigue and espionage as they try to, stop these well-to-do, elites from leaving, and then basically destroying the surface of the earth to be, a nuclear wasteland for the next, couple hundred years, ultimately destroying most of the infrastructure and life on their way out. And I think that's where we left, unless I left something out.
No, that sounds like it.
We had a character, a hero sidekick, Giles, had been he is a tech guy and had been on he was on the original team that was cataloging all of the stuff and trying to sort out what, some of this tech and figure out how to use it and all that. And in the midst of all that process, he kind of purloined one of these fancy masks, and it's a specific, the neural interface for him is it just connects him up with all of his brain's capacity to store and catalog information. And he can do calculations at, the speed of a computer, and but anyway, when things started going crazy, he headed off to the, to get as close to this Russian launch center as he could, because he wanted to get on the next arc, and he realized that the whole system was corrupt. And I think the stage was set for him to connect up with the hero, and he's got a bunch of tech knowledge that's going to be helpful, but he's realizing that the whole thing is corrupt. If you're not one of the inside players, you're basically SOL,
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, you weren't just making a statement about life. You were saying about the story.
Yeah, something like that.
What story elements did you guys had? I had a unique artifact.
I had wild card.
Ooh, that's interesting. I have random insert.
So I think I should go first then.
Unique artifact, you say?
Yes. So here's the thing. This isn't a unique artifact. This is a reclassification of the masks. The aliens, right, that were in this ship that the masks came from, these masks are the last physical part of their bodies, right? They had sort of converted to, in order to live in like the rigors of space, like the weightlessness, they had like converted to like a jellyfish kind of thing a long time ago. And the last sort of physical thing they stayed connected to was the front part of their skull. And in it, they put all their tech to be able to control all of their ship, right? And everything around them. And that's why it has such a good neural interface. That's why it worked as a neural interface right from the beginning. Is because that's what it was. It's the remote control for all of their stuff. And what's happened now is through the last couple of years, the tech, it's basically we've been playing copy paste with the code and the programming structure that was on the ship. So all it takes is for one person, which I'm going to say is the villain, to realize this or to kind of think he's from God, right? And he sort of approaches using he was one of the first people who sort of began to approach the use of the masks as more of a religious thing. He's from India, and he sort of, the way that he approached it, we're not sure how it was, if it was his brain chemistry, if it was his unique approach, but he can now call forth quote unquote miracles because he's communed with this mask in like the right way or the right series of steps that he can just like make machines turn on, right? Because machines are now quote unquote enhanced by the technology that we found in the ship, but all the enhancements sort of have a back door that they take commands from an activated mask, right? And so he is kind of gathering a group. You guys know about the Children's Crusades?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, right? So he's not part of these third party secondary countries who kind of struck back in order to save themselves, and he's not part of that. He's like Masuma from Wheel of Time, like the Prophet of the Dragon. He's this kind of third thing. He's not an elite, although he enjoys the company of the elites because the elites like recognize the fact that he has some crazy power. He never takes his mask off, and he's insane, but he's activated enough of the mask that he has this kind of religious following and is now trying to sort of either force everyone else into subjugation, or just eradicate those who don't agree with him. And when I say the Children's Crusade, what I mean by that is he can get a crowd going and he can get people gathered up, but he doesn't assign leaders of the thousands and their hundreds and their tens, right? It's like the French Revolution. The mobs just follow him. He says go, and people just go out and attack that convoy of tanks and armored personnel carriers, and the tanks and the armored personnel carriers get overrun because they try and scare the people away, but the people are just like brainwashed or something. So, and what I mean by the Children's Crusade, it was like this crusade of like 15,000 orphans that this one kid like got them all riled up, and they left and traveled to the Holy Land in order to do a crusade, and like a bunch of them got killed on the trip over, and then a bunch of them got taken into slavery, and they did nothing. And it was like this fervor to do something, but it was not coordinated. There was no leadership behind it at all. So that's the unique artifact. And the villain, I guess. I also came up with the villain.
What should we call this guy?
I don't know. I don't want to call him something. He's from India, but I don't know any Indian names, and I don't want to.
You want to make up some kind of a phony thing?
I don't want to engage.
Use the Crusades again. I think it was Peter the Hermit was one of the instigators of some of the original Crusades. In some of that same manner, he was a. So maybe that's not his real name, but that's what he goes by.
Oh, this guy in our story?
Yeah.
Okay, that works. Peter.
Just to throw it back to the Crusades again, because again, Peter the Hermit like went around and was like there was like kind of not really an issue, and then he kind of went around and was like, you guys should be upset about this, and they're like, oh, yeah, we kind of should be. And so I think it was like one of the first Crusades was all riled up with the Children's Crusade, the peasantry that basically kind of went over there and thought they were going to, do what was holy and righteous because they were riled up by this kind of Peter the Hermit monk kind of guy.
Yeah. So
then
he can be called Peter. I'm fine if he calls himself Peter.
Yeah. I don't know. Just
all right. So that's that guy. Do you want me to start talking about the story and how it's going to go? Or do you guys want to add in your random insert or your...
So I'll do the wild card. Wild card, great. I chose Unique Pet.
Nice.
And I think it's a pet of Michael's over there. I'm pretty sure they have ravens. They have ravens just about anywhere. But yeah, he acquired a raven as a kind of a hatchling, or maybe he... because I think over there they can do that. In some of those countries, they just do that. They take eagles and falcons and stuff. Where over here, you'll go to jail for it. Yeah. Maybe you go to jail for it over there, but I know they do it. And he raised this raven, which then I was kind of like thinking like homing pigeon, but it's kind of like it'll go and it'll fetch things for him, retrieve things for him. Ravens are pretty smart.
Yeah.
And kind of over the years, he's trained it to fetch different things. Like if he knows what something looks like, he can draw a picture of it and like show it to him. Directional. Shows him like an aerial map where he should be able to find it. I think there's different stories where like the ravens will do stuff like that. But anyways, for all intents and purposes, that's what it does. Is it like we'll retrieve things or bring messages back and forth to different agents, and just kind of be like a cool sidekick
Cool.
companion thing.
Cool. I like it. So let's set the scene here. The scene is set what we think is a couple of weeks after the initial bombardment, right? With Michael's trying to escape someone. I'm guessing that he, in order to get answers, was trying to get closer to Omsk and was sort of found out by, a pair of ruffian, and then fled, and that's where our beginning scene happened.
So in the beginning scene, he was not fleeing from the powers that be. He was fleeing from these rebels. I had the idea from the beginning scene that he was running away, but somebody grabbed him and pulled him into hiding. So he avoided being caught by the guys he was running from.
Right.
But then they turned out to be. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
The rebels. He was saved by the rebels.
I think maybe just because it's kind of how it works is if the idea of too much, perhaps being in the line of work he was in, caught wind of some of what was going on, some of the kind of sleight of hand, some of the things, and maybe because he's just one cog in the wheel, he doesn't put it all together. But whatever maybe he does know, or some information that he was given that maybe he wasn't able to relay, maybe he looks at that later and finds out that that's the thing, is there really wasn't a bunch of nukes that went off, or at least not to the scale that they're telling everybody, as a retaliation. And perhaps that's where, they use them, and then when they've kind of filled their purpose, like, that's it, they're done.
Yeah.
And
part of me thinks that he sort of goes through most of the, over half of the book, knowing that something happened, and then believing that if anyone did the bad thing, it was Russia that did the bad thing, right? And then at some point in time, he escapes from the rebels who have captured him and are forcing him to help them, and then tries to make contact and realize that all of his contacts have been burned, and that, this is much bigger than just this kind of area that I'm at right now.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then he just makes the next best decision, to just trust these people who aren't killing him right now. And maybe Giles.
Yeah.
Maybe Giles is kind of enough of an American, enough of a kind of a picture of back home that he, who Giles is taken up with these rebels to some degree.
Right.
Enough of a, I don't know. I don't know how secret agents decide to trust people and change their minds. I imagine it probably has to take a lot for a secret agent to say, oh, the government that I work for is bad, and therefore I'm going to fight against them.
Right.
My thought is that he just kind of operates on the idea of just do the next right thing.
Yes.
He's enough of my chain of command above me has been destroyed that I just have to do the next thing that I know to be right in front of me and do that. And that just kind of organically leads him into being with them. He doesn't give away his secrets. He treats it more like he's a mercenary who's been hired by this group of people. He's got lines he won't cross.
Right.
But in order to work with them, he needs to work with them,
So perhaps what it is, you talk about his contacts being burned. Perhaps what it is some other informant that's below him sent out the info to him, and it would have relayed up the chain of command. But then someone else caught that and then started just his contacts burned anyone that would have got that information.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why he's originally on the run, doesn't quite know who it is. So maybe that's why he originally tries to escape, tries to make recontact, only to find that anyone on his, info chain is out, been
Right.
eliminated or in hiding.
Right.
And then that's where he gets the only, let's say, drop is on like a, what do you call it? Like a protected server or something that he receives, info from one of the people who then, informed him that this is what was going on. And so then that maybe leads him back to the, kind of the rebel countries. Say rebel countries, but these secondary countries.
Yeah, second tier countries. One of the things I was thinking of, maybe the reason why he's here is because he's investigating because this religion would have started somewhere in India, right? And then would have sort of begun to move out. And he's been kind of, he's not necessarily spying on Russia in Kazakhstan, but he is there to kind of take the temperature of these more rural towns and like, how is this religion kind of spreading out, in order to kind of, and so that is what he's watching for. And already this religion, I'm thinking that this religion is technology based in some way with these aliens. Like they coded it into the neural matrix, the neural links or whatever we call them, to basically you get sort of enough connected to it and you start to like build up the systems needed to bring these aliens back. It like tricks your brain into doing this. And the way it formulates in the human mind is via religion.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of like this, it's kind of like a virus, like a neural virus that transports from person to person on what they hear. Like the specific, it like hits the specific parts of the human psyche, and it's a lot more powerful if you're subjected to a mask because it can like directly alter your brain chemistry, but it happens on varying degrees to everyone who uses the mask or who are part of the whatever influence that the aliens had, whatever technology that they had influence over. So in one part, these rural towns are really shielded and protected because they don't have any of the technology, but in another part, they're incredibly susceptible because a truck rolls in with a bunch of technology, offers to, do free power, free internet, free whatever. And they just bring with them, they're like missionaries. They just bring with them all of this technology and it just bathes everyone. And then soon everyone converts to this religion and then it just kind of moves on. And that is what Michael is watching for. Right? Because Omsk is one of the launch sites. And if this religion is able to get to and move past this town, then it gets onto one of these ships that are trying to leave, then that's a no-go. So then he agrees to join with the rebels because he's like, well, if I can't stop this religion from seeping through, then what I can do at least is join with these guys and stop the ship from leaving.
Right.
And therefore he has some kind of reasons not to, and it's kind of this race against time, as this religion begins to kind of seep into everything. There's certain people who are more resilient to it, certain people who it doesn't affect as much, but other people who just like kind of give into it wholeheartedly. What do you guys think of that?
That sounds like kind of an interesting story thing. I'm a little worried about my random insert. We'll see how it fits.
Well, do you want to insert it now?
Yeah, I might as well. Okay. In the midst of all this, a ship enters orbit and they take up high Earth orbit geosynchronous over this Russian launch site. And it turns out it's actually one of the Earth ships that had gone years and years before.
Oh, nice.
And it comes back, but it's a former Earth ship, but it's much modified. And there's an Earth crew, but they're subjected by by mask wearers and who are in command of the ship. And they seek communication with command at launch site through one of the Earth crew that they're able to, translate. Turns out they had been monitoring developments on Earth, and they recognized that some of this technology started showing up. So they realized that they must have found the lost ship. So they felt like, they were alarmed by the chaos of it was obvious, with the satellites and stuff going offline, and that there was all kinds of chaos going on, and they're trying to connect with somebody that's in charge, and nobody really knows what their motivations are, because they are this very alien people who had continued to develop, all these years since this ship was lost.
Right.
And then they were able to, in their, I don't know if they're still in jellyfish form or whatever, but by the time that ship had come to Earth years ago and gotten buried, I mean, they were already advanced beyond the corporeal form, except for their interface masks. And so now they have just taken over an Earth ship that had gone out into the universe to, maybe whatever. And then they just commandeered the crew, put masks on them, and used them as the interface to the physical apparatus of the ship. And then they modified the ship so it could get back there in a hurry when they realized that things were kind of going kablooey back on Earth. And so it remains to be seen. I don't know what their motives are, what their state of development, but they have some concern about their technology being now in the hands of this earthly species. So there they are.
Right. That's good. I like that. Should that be kind of like so let's kind of lay this story out here, right? So beginning scene, we see Michael running away from the authorities and being pseudo-captured, but pseudo-rescued by the rebel from these second-tier countries.
Right.
We have a little bit of history about, what humanity has done and who they are and stuff like that. And then we get some introduction, maybe a couple chapters, which are like previously in Michael's story, about what he's doing and what he's, what his goal is, what his job is.
Right.
And then there's the introduction of the religion.
Right. And I'm not expecting that Peter the Hermit is going to really be a big hit with these aliens that are coming back to try to figure out, oh geez, what have we unleashed,
Yeah. Or he's going to be a really big hit because he is essentially following what's built into their systems, which is make way for us.
Yeah.
I would say that as they come back, it'd probably be that, he sets himself up as like the prophet for the returning gods idea.
Yeah. I mean, even though they aren't concerned with him at all because now they're back. It's like, well, you didn't do everything you could have to make way for us. I feel like this is one of those things where he just he is like this really crazy threat. All of his followers are this really crazy threat. They fight them the whole time, and then these aliens come back and they just kind of sweep him away because it's like, well, now we're back. So bye. So then they're traveling to, I'm just trying to figure out the path of the story here. So then they're traveling to Omsk from Uzbekistan. It's like 190 miles. Where was it's like 190 miles from the village that he lives in to there. So, I mean, it's not like a crazy amount of time, It's like 4 hours or something. But maybe they have to walk or go on foot or something like that. So how would this work? So they get to the outside of Omsk. Michael is now convinced, at least in some ways, just due to his own, talking to, I don't remember the name of the...
Giles.
Just in talking to Giles, he's at least a little bit convinced, that things aren't exactly as they should be. The rebel group wants to destroy the rocket. Some of them have talked about wanting to get on the rocket because being a rebel is fine, but surviving this kind of growing plague of these religious fanatics is like a little bit better than, than destroying the rocket, right? And Michaels wants to destroy, but really kind of like just waylay.
Yeah.
But I think what ends up happening is there's fights, and he ends up being on it right as it ends up launching.
Yeah,
right?
cool.
He goes into space, sees this ship that's sort of sitting there. It comes and docks with it, and then, the people come in and they're like, their eyes are closed and they've got these masks on, and the masks have like tentacles that are like digging into the people's faces. It's a very obvious picture that it's like they've been taken over,
The Borg collective.
Yeah, exactly.
Resistance is futile.
Michael's is thankful once again for not relying on them. Giles,
yeah.
Gives up his life, because he's already connected to his mask so much that like if he tried to go any further, it would take him over, and so he sacrifices himself valiantly to do something.
Yeah.
And they get to like whatever the control room, and there's like 1 or 2 or 3 of these sort of creatures with these masks.
Yeah.
Is this a sad ending story?
I kind of was thinking like there's some vestige of humanity in this Earth crew that they have commandeered, and they're so gone from the corporeal world that they need these Earthmen, And what if they've been taken over by the mask, thing, but deep inside they're still people.
Right. So maybe they someone pushes a button and the windows open up and you can see the Earth.
Yeah.
And then all the people who are sitting at all the computers dead. Dead.
They've been off in space, and their whole deal, their mission had been taken over by the mask people.
Yeah.
And then of course Giles and Michael, they've gotten on board, and Giles knows about this. He's spent his life trying to understand this technology, and I have the idea, like what you said, he interfaces with the computer and shields the rest of the Earth crew from the tentacles, so to speak,
right.
And shorts himself out, and these guys come out of their, look it, and we're back home, look it, there's Earth, and
But I think there should be a moment where where Giles is there and they're, fighting the last vestiges of the people and blah, blah, blah. And there's these kind of ethereal creatures who are just flying around.
Yeah.
And they can interface with the masks. So as long as the masks are wearing, and Giles is, there's this struggle. And finally, Giles just looks at Michaels and just says something like, you've got to let everyone know. You got to let everyone know. And he's like, what are you talking about? And 2 of the big bruisers by the door. And at this point, anytime someone's close to Giles who has a mask on, Giles can take them over and make them do what he wants.
Yeah.
Giles looks behind him and Michaels turns around as 2 big guys with masks on grab Peter and drag him to the escape pod, right? And put him in the escape pod. And then as he goes down, the ship turns towards the sun and then begins to accelerate and accelerate and accelerate and accelerate until finally it burns up in the sun. The idea being is that we're all gone. like we were fighting a losing battle. You've got to like go down to earth now and like let people know,
Right.
you know?
I don't want to die in vain. Let them know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. That's kind of an exciting story.
Yeah. And it leads the way to a sequel in case that ever is a thing that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Seth, you got anything cool to add, or is that good?
No, I think that's good.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you liked this episode, if you like the stories that we have been bringing to you, let us know at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or adding us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. If you think that there's something we could have done better, there's some story element that we're missing, some key component to the story building process that we need to work on, I would say just wait. It gets better.